You're listening to The Sensible Sessions. I'm your host, Amber Wardell. Along with my guests who range from experts in their fields to people with incredible experiences and perspectives, our hope is to bring you stories designed to make you laugh, make you cry, or make you think, bringing a sensible approach to a world that's lost its mind. So stay tuned and let's start the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Sensible Sessions. I'm your host, Amber Wardell, and today I'm so excited to have a special guest with me. This is Candice Catoire. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also a motherhood burnout coach. And when I tell you that these are just two things that are so close to my heart and something that I'm just really, really excited to share with you today, we got to have a few conversations off camera about just a litany of things that I find really exciting and that I've kind of shared with you on my own and in my social media and my blogs, in a podcast that I did recently all by myself about spirituality and the burnout that I feel around that. So I'm just very excited to have Candice on today. So with no further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Candice. Hello, Candice. Thank you so much for being on today.
Hello. I'm glad to be here.
I know it's super early for you over there in California.
Yes, very early. And actually, to most people, probably not that early because it's a little after 7. But for our household, it's early.
Well, and also, I just think in general, early for being up and being on. It's one thing to just be awake at 7 a.m. It's another thing to be up and presentable and be able to speak about things in a coherent way. That's early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because when I see clients, I don't start till after 9:30 because I do it all after I take the kids to school. So it's such a different world being up and let's have our brains work.
Well, now hold on. I have to back up a little bit because our house must operate a lot differently than your house. What time do your kids usually get up?
Sometime between now and 8 o'clock.
How old are your kids?
One just turned 6 and one is 4. He'll turn 5 soon. But our school is on a late start time. For our district. So it makes it easy.
I'm going to not let myself get envious.
Okay.
They say that everything balances out. And I know there are probably great things about my kids that have been easy that maybe weren't easy for you. But my kids have always been terrible sleepers. That's been our battle. And so my kids will, my one son who's 8, he will wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That is, his body is set to 4 a.m. Now, we've kind of taught him how to, he can self-regulate until about 5 a.m. But that's it. 5 a.m., that's it. We're all done. We're up at 5 a.m. And then my daughter, she's kind of just adapted to his schedule. But when my kids were babies, it was 4 a.m. We're up, we're screaming, we want fed and everything. And so when I meet people whose kids are oh yeah, they're up at 7 or 8, I'm just we don't know her.
Right.
I don't know what that's like.
Our nights are later.
Okay.
So, and that fit what we have been doing their whole lives. And so we just kept it that way. And then when we found out our school was late start time, it just fit with what we were already doing. But people find out we have a 9 p.m. bedtime and they're like, what is that? What are you doing? And I'm like, well, my kids don't have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So our son takes forever to go to sleep, though. That's the only thing. That's his sleep thing. And then, so yeah, that's just how we roll here.
Yeah. And you always you have to adapt. It's been, for us, we always get people who are well-meaning, but they say things like, we'll put him to bed later. I'm like, oh, thank you. That never crossed our mind. We never thought to try that.
We never thought about that.
Right. I'll put them to bed 3 hours past their bedtime and they'll sleep in 6 minutes later. So I'm not going to torment myself by keeping them up until 9 p.m.
Right.
And then they'll sleep in until 5:06 in the morning. No, thank you. I'm going to put them to bed at 7. So at least I have some time in the evening to myself, I'm not.
Yes.
Is this something, I know we kind of talked, when we spoke on the phone, we kind of said we were going to talk about spirituality first and then go into motherhood, but we sort of it feels a little bit more natural to go with motherhood first since we're already here. So I kind of want to ask you, is when you talk about motherhood burnout, to me, maybe it's just because this has been the battle that we have fought the most in our household. But I know that mothers so often, like, sleep is a big thing for themselves. And I think often a lot of that is because sleep is so hard with the children. Is
Yeah.
that something that you deal with a lot with moms when they talk
Yeah.
about burnout?
So sleep patterns and sleep hygiene is one thing that I talk to moms about a lot, because when our sleep is out of whack, when their sleep is out of whack, it's hard to operate. But we also have to find what works for our families. And so I felt a lot of judgment early on because we had such a late bedtime for them when they were little. And people were like, they should be going to bed at 7. They should be going to bed at 7:30. And I was like, that's never going to work in our house. No one will ever get sleep. And we co-slept with our daughter when she was little because that's the only way I could sleep. And so I do feel lucky because I know we've gotten more sleep than most people when it comes to like that kind of thing. But it is something I deal with because when moms and kids don't get sleep, it's really hard to be patient. You're on edge about everything. Everything seems more overwhelming. And I've had those seasons of life where I'm like, everything is getting to me. I don't know what to do. And sleep is a big part of it. So, yeah. Because our mornings go super smooth around here 99% of the time. And I attribute that, one of those things that I attribute it to is sleep, is we keep our sleep schedule. And I don't require it to match what their peers are doing, what the internet says to do. We just do what's best for our household. So that's what I encourage moms to do.
I'm so glad that you're doing that, because I have a chapter about this in my book, Beyond Self-Care Potato Chips, where like I have a whole section that is about, family life and motherhood and that kind of thing. And I have one chapter where it's actually about dinners of all damn things. But
Okay, yeah.
I'm talking about in the book where it's like my parents did beautiful family dinners. I was an only child, and so dinners were really special. It was like my mom made beautiful dinners, and we would sit down together as a family, and like we would do our prayers, and we would have this lovely family dinner time. And so when I had my kids, I had them back to back. Neither of them were good sleepers. So I wasn't sleeping at all. I was having really bad postpartum depression, and dinners were not gelling the way that it was with when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't being able to create that like magic, that dinner magic that my mom was able to make. And I was so hard on myself. And so what I was doing was like, I was just trying to make it work. Right. So I was like, I don't know. I'm going to get myself some Chinese leftovers from last night, and I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm going to nurse the baby, and I'm going to eat this leftover Chinese food. Charlie, can you please get the toddler some dino nuggies? And you're on your own, Charlie, for dinner. And we're all just going to survive dinner the best we can. Right. And like, I remember at the time watching TikTok videos of people who were like, I am not a made to order chef. I make one dinner and everyone eats that. And, making all these rules about how we're supposed to make dinner. And I remember feeling so hard on myself about that and getting even more depressed because I was like, evidently there are some rules I'm supposed to be following, and I'm not doing that. And I wasn't coming across people who were doing what you're teaching, which is like, nope. No, if that doesn't make sense for your household, don't do that.
Right.
You need to do what's making sense. Right?
Yeah. And
so
I do that with dinners too. Like that's a big one for moms too, because like we luckily have been able to make mostly the same food, but I did not have the same dinner experience growing up. Because for a very long period of time, I was the one who made dinner for me and my siblings because my mom worked overnight. So I was just like, I thought because I enjoyed cooking, I was just going to like to do it as like a mom, but it's a chore to figure out every meal, make sure you have all the ingredients, do all the things. And so that's another thing where I'm like, do what's best for your household. After my son, when I was postpartum, I also had postpartum depression, but I was diagnosed with several chronic illnesses where for almost his first year of life, I could barely get out of bed. And so we ate a lot of fast food. We ate a lot of like microwave food, like whatever we could do. whatever was easiest for my husband or easiest for me because I could make it to the kitchen, figure stuff out. And like we lived in that house for like a little over a year. I don't remember using the kitchen very much, which is crazy to me because I do a lot of our cooking now. And so talk about the guilt when you're like fast food after fast food after fast food. It's really hard. But I just tell moms, like, what is going to work for your family? Like, I've been a proponent of frozen and canned foods for a long time because you have to do what's best for your family.
Yeah.
And the rules will drive you crazy if you try to follow everybody's rules, because half of them conflict anyway.
Right? Right. Oh my gosh. Now I want to touch on something. We're going to take a brief pause for a word from our sponsor, which is me. And then when we come back, I want to touch on something else. So we're going to roll my little sponsored video, which I made, and we'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Beyond Self-Care Potato Chips, choosing nourishing self-care in a quick fix culture. If you've ever felt like bubble baths and candles aren't cutting it, this book is for you. Written by a cognitive psychologist, it's full of relatable stories, insights to help you step into your power, set boundaries, and feel truly nourished mind, body, and soul. Links to the paperback, Kindle, and audiobook versions are in the show notes below.
Okay, we're back. So Candice, you mentioned something in passing in that, but I want to drill down on it because this breaks my heart when mothers speak about this. You said, I thought that I would love cooking for my family because I love cooking. And then I realized that it's a chore getting all the ingredients and being in the kitchen and getting all this stuff done with all my other things. And I think we don't speak about this enough, how motherhood robs things of you from you. It can take things that you used to love and turn them into chores.
Yes.
And if you say that out loud, you're an ungrateful mom. Why'd you have kids if you didn't want to have to do those things? And then you swallow that down and you learn, don't ever say that again. But man, you know, who doesn't? My daughter loves to cook dinners with me. And I'm so afraid of that day coming when she's standing in her kitchen and she breaks down crying, realizing that she's not having fun doing this anymore because this has become a chore now.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I didn't even realize, as I was saying it, I was like, oh, we're not supposed to be saying things like this. But it's the truth. When you have to do it every day for yourself and for other people, it can become a lot. But motherhood changes a lot of things for people. I am of the opinion we should talk about it more. So one thing that I do work with women a lot on is finding themselves in motherhood again, finding those parts of themselves that either they put on the back burner or they found they didn't love in motherhood, like cooking. It's not my favorite thing, but I do enjoy when I put together a meal for my family. I'm like, yes, look what I did, but it changes things. And so I talk to women a lot about what are those parts of yourself that you want to get back? And then how are we integrating motherhood into that? So you're not replacing who you were with motherhood, you're integrating motherhood. And that makes it a lot easier to say those things out loud. Like, hey, I don't really enjoy cooking anymore. Or I don't want to sit down and read a book anymore because it's a lot to try to focus on that when in 2 seconds I'm going to have to put it away. Or I don't want to pull out my art supplies because in 2 seconds, some kid is going to have my paint all over the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, maybe we can learn to readjust. I picked up, because I was sick, I picked up digital art. And then that became something my kids just love to watch me do. Is my iPad with my Apple Pencil instead of, they would probably watch me paint too, but then I would have paint everywhere, and it's easier on me to do it this way now. And so it really is about admitting those things and not being ashamed of it. But the world makes you feel ashamed because if you say it out loud, like you said, it's like, you're ungrateful. How could you think this? Why did you become a mom? It's like when you set up for the holidays and the mom is doing everything and then and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting. It's not that you're not enjoying the holidays with your kids. It's like you're doing the decorating, the baking, the wrapping, the shopping. And then the world is like, well, you're the one that chose to become a mom. And it's like, yeah, but this still sucks. sometimes,
Right.
like, you know.
Right. And I sometimes I love pushing back on people when they say things like that, because sometimes they'll say, well, if you don't like it, then don't do it. And I'm like, and what would you say if I didn't?
Right.
What would you say if you came to my house and there wasn't a Christmas tree up?
Right. Yeah.
Would you look at my husband and ask him why the tree wasn't up? Would you look at him and ask why there weren't decorations?
Yeah.
Or would you call me a bad mom? Yeah, it's just it's crazy to me. So I love that I love the way that you put that. Like, let's take what you want to bring back into your life and let's integrate motherhood into it. Because I think one of the best things that I heard early on in motherhood was, like, of course you do have to, like, you have to figure out how to enjoy the things that your kids are doing too. Like, you have to get down on the floor and you have to play with them and that stuff. And, like, you have to find the joy in that, but also, like, figure out how to bring your kids into the things that you enjoy. And so I've had a lot of fun bringing, like, I taught my children how to roller skate,
Right.
and that was really fun. I've brought, and my husband is teaching my daughter. They share a love of art. He's teaching her how to do shading and things like that, and things that, for me, I remember seeing a video of this dad teaching his, like, 3-year-old daughter how to skateboard. And I was like, there's no way a 3-year-old should be skateboarding. They can't do that. And then
Right.
here she is doing it. And I realized, wow, we really kind of underestimate what little kids can do and what they can be interested in.
Yeah.
And it turns out, and this feels stupid to say out loud, we should know this, but I just remember having this revelation that, like, it really is true that they just want to spend time with us.
Yeah.
And in
Absolutely.
fact, we can bring them along with the things that we're doing, and they'll probably just enjoy that. And if we're having fun and we're having a good time and they can see that energy in us, they're going to have a good time regardless. I have a question for you. I have never cried on someone else's podcast except this one damn time. I was on Paula Swope's Thought Snob podcast.
Okay.
And at the end of it, she asked me, she said, what is your advice for moms who are just in the thick of it, who are just completely at the end of their rope, who are feeling lost, they've lost themselves, they're depressed, they don't know what to do. What is your advice? Like, what's your practical advice for getting out of that? And I just said, I have none.
Right.
And I teared up and I said, anything that I would say to them would sound very trite, because sometimes you're just in the suck of it. Sometimes it just sucks and it's not your turn right now. Like, it's not your turn to get to enjoy some of these things right now. And it was a beautiful moment for her and I, like, of just acknowledging that part.
Right.
But I also went on to acknowledge that, like I said, there's probably someone out there who does have those answers. I'm not equipped with those answers. So all I'm able to do, and maybe what I'm supposed to offer, is this message that, like, it's okay to just admit that it sucks. So I'm excited to have you here, because I'm wondering if you do have something practical to share.
It's really ironic that you asked that, because as you were describing the question in my head, I was thinking anything I say is going to sound pedantic. It's going to sound like I am like giving this pie in the sky dream. But in reality, like, one of the things that we can do is just hold on to one of those, like, little things that we liked before and just spend like 5 minutes every day doing that thing. Because, or as many days as we can, not have to, like, I don't want to, it wouldn't be pressurized to be every day, but like 5 minutes listening to your favorite kind of music. That's not Mrs. Rachel, Blippy, Barney, Bluey, whatever. 5 minutes listening to an audiobook in your genre. If you're like, reading is completely like out of the like picture. What I noticed for a lot of people that I've worked with and for myself was, especially music, when we like let ourselves listen to music that we've always loved instead of what the kids are listening to, even for a few minutes a day, that keeps us connected and keeps us like, okay, there is a part of me that was here before and I'll get back to her again. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is that you can spend 5 minutes doing while the kids sleep, because otherwise sleep while the kids sleep or clean while the kids sleep, whatever it is you want to do while the kids sleep. Like, I'm not a big proponent of give rules for moms while the kids nap. Let the moms do what they're going to do, you know? But
Yeah.
5 minutes listening to music that you've always connected with, or 5 minutes listening to an audiobook in your genre, or whatever it is, because that can make a big difference. 5 minutes, even just drawing, if that's what you were like loving before, of just moving the pencil across the page, it can just light something up in you where you're like, that's who I was and I will get back to her. Right now, I'm just in the middle of it. It's just hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, because my thing was, now that I think back on it, the thing that I always did was, I'm a type A anxiety ridden Capricorn. And so I always struggled with, like, I didn't feel like it was allowable to sit down and relax. And my husband never put this on me. I put this on myself, but especially
Right.
if he was home, I felt like I would, because he works so hard and I work too, but he pays the majority of our bills and he helps around the house. And so with a husband like that, how dare I sit down, you know? And
Right,
so I
yeah.
really, really struggled with that. And that's a me thing, not a him thing. And so the only way I could ever bring myself to feel okay to sit down, which is ridiculous. I've been through a lot of therapy to get rid of that mindset. But 5 years ago, I wasn't there. And so what I would do is, when I would go to the grocery store, I would shop for the groceries. And I knew, you know, we have our location turned on our phones so that we can always just know each other is safe and whatnot. And
Right.
I would
Of
know
course.
my location is in the Kroger parking lot. Perfect. And I would do the grocery shopping, get myself a Coke and a grocery store sushi. And then I would go and put all the groceries in the car. And I would sit in my car and I would put on a YouTube video that I wanted to watch. And I would just sit there. I would take 15, 20 minutes and eat my
Yeah.
sushi and drink my Coke. And sorry. Oh yeah, it was a long line, long ass line at the grocery store. So sorry. And I didn't have to lie. I didn't need to lie to my husband, but I somehow needed to justify taking time for myself to the extent that I had to lie about what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like,
A lot of women feel that way. A lot of women feel that way, especially when they're work from home or stay at home moms, and the husband works out of the home. I was forced to reckon with some of this because of my chronic illnesses, because I physically couldn't do much. Like, my kids hung out with me in my room, and I got my daughter into video games as I was like on my healing journey, because like, what else am I going to do with them if I can't physically get on the floor and play with them? If I can't, you know, I have to do something to connect to them.
yeah.
And so a lot of that was like, for us, it was like, when I look like resting, sometimes I'm not resting. Like, my body is just like hit a wall. So, but what I've noticed with working with women is a lot of women feel what you felt. Like, I need to find 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, but I need to hide it. I need to like pretend like it's not happening. And it has to be adjacent to another chore or another task that I am doing to be productive.
Yeah, that's it. You
So,
worded that perfectly. Yes.
like, an audiobook while I'm cleaning, not an audiobook while I'm sitting for 5 minutes paying attention, or music while I'm driving, not music while I'm sitting and just listening to the music. It has to be adjacent to something productive,
So where do you think
which is
we get
actually
that
what I
from?
do right now with my music. I'm like, oh, I can listen to my music because I'm driving them to school. Then, like, probably like 3 months ago, I was like, this is silly, because I would tell my clients, just enjoy the music whenever. Like, your kids can take 15 minutes away from what they're doing for you to have control of the TV or the music for a little while. Your kids will be okay, you know? But like, we all do that. It's like, it has to be adjacent to something I'm doing productive.
And why do you think that is?
I think there's a lot of societal messages that we are supposed to be the productive ones in the home. Our men are being productive outside of the home. And so we are supposed to be productive inside the home. The problem is that looks different for every family. And so we're taking on society's messages of what that looks like, what that sounds like, what that acts like. But for every home, every family, it's very different. When we try to put us into someone else's box, it becomes more difficult to do.
Which is crazy, right? Because I remember making this realization one day of like, wait a minute, when my husband's at work, he takes a lunch. When my husband's at work, he gets breaks. He's required to take breaks. Wait a minute. He has an hour-long commute, 2-hour-long commutes a day. That's like, I remember realizing all these things. Like, hang on a damn minute. It's like, what am I doing to myself here? It's just, and it makes you feel stupid. It makes you feel so stupid. Like, and I had to really start dealing with myself on this one thing. A very embarrassing but important question I had to start addressing with myself is, yes, a lot of this is patriarchal. A lot of this is cultural that has been ingrained and indoctrinated into me. But how much of this is stuff that I have I have to take ownership of? That like some of this is just nonsense that I have put on myself that I can't even blame culture for at this point. Like, I have to look at me and go, Amber, but you got to take the L on this one. Like, you can just stop doing this today and your whole life will change for the better. That one's on you, you know?
Right.
And start making those changes.
And I think that there's a lot of women that just aren't there yet.
Yeah.
But that is something like we decide for ourselves and our families, like, okay, I'm going to decide what works for my family, and then I'm going to ignore the messages that say otherwise. I'm going to, like, there's a fine line, right? Because it's like, I'm not going to neglect my kids. I'm not going to, like, ignore their interests, but I'm going to prioritize my mental health.
Yeah. Okay, so we're running a little short on time, and there's one topic that I really wanted to get to, and I feel like we're at a nice segue to it because you mentioned kind of like shirking expectations and doing what makes sense for you. And you and I talked about this over the phone recently, and you and I have something in common. And this is also something you talk about in your practice, which is women who are coming to terms with their faith and their spirituality and navigating a world that feels really hard to do that in right now. And this is really a special topic to me. And I feel like this has intersections with motherhood and womanhood and all of these things, right? I talk a lot about this idea of being a spiritual orphan, a Christianity orphan, being spiritually homeless. I've shared on my social media that my husband and I are no longer affiliated with a church. We're still Christians and we believe in God and we have community with other Christians, but we, for now, are not in a church, and we have our own sort of reasons for that, which I don't want to go into today. But and we get a lot of pushback for that, and we also have a lot of people who tell us every day that we're doing the same thing. And it's been one of those things. It's kind of like what you said. It's been a time of our lives where it's like, yeah, not everybody, including my own parents, agrees with this path, but it is the path of doing what feels right and what feels best for us. And you mentioned on the phone that this is something that a lot of your clients have been mentioning to you. And I wanted to just ask you about that and see what's coming up. You know, if you could speak generally about what's coming up in your sessions with women about this.
Yeah. So what I'm finding is that there is a whole group of women from more fundamentalist backgrounds or even like less fundamentalist evangelical backgrounds who are looking around them, who were changed by motherhood or changed by marriage or exposure to things. And they're like, wait a minute, the way that I was told isn't what I'm seeing in the Bible or in other people. And I don't know how to reconcile that. And then once they get to the point where they reconcile that with themselves and their partners, it's like, but now where do we fit in the broader landscape of the Christian church? And that is something that I have also struggled with, as even like my husband is not actively pastoring at this moment, but as a pastor's wife where I'm like, hey, I don't fit in a lot of the places that we've been before. Like they don't want me and I'm not sure I want to be there. Like they don't want women like me because I'm loud, I'm vocal, and I'm like, hey, let's look at this in a different light, you know? And so what I'm finding is that they're realizing that they as women, not even just mothers, but they as women are worth more than they were taught in this environment, and that the God that they worship sees them as more valuable than the people that they're learning from. And they're like coming to terms with that. So then where do I fit? And so that's a big thing that we're working on.
I have chills.
So.
I love to hear this. I love to hear this because it's so hard to reconcile the God of the Bible, Jesus of the Bible.
The Jesus of the Bible, yeah.
Who loved women.
Yes.
And then the bastardization of what's in the Bible by men in this world who have made it seem as though God doesn't actually care that much about women. And when you hear some men, and I'm going to be careful, when you hear some men speak about the God that I know of the Bible, one might believe that God doesn't care about women very much.
Right. Yeah.
And when you do, when you wake up and you start to realize, wait a minute, I think I've been fed a shovel full of horse shit for a while here.
Right. Yeah.
And you realize there is a God who is so different than the one that the church taught you about.
Yes.
And he is greater than to just realize. I could go on about this forever and we don't have enough time. But to hear that you're experiencing this in therapy with these women, this is like that there's this awakening happening that women are realizing. And that I think what I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but I think what you've touched on is something that is beautiful and exciting, which is that there are so many women who are waking up and saying, that's it, I'm done with the church and I'm done with religion altogether. We're hearing a lot about that. What I find beautiful is to hear that there are women who are waking up and falling more in love with God because they're realizing that God that they heard about from men isn't the real God. And there is something beautiful and worth worshiping that's not that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's amazing because in my private practice and therapy, we're dealing with this. And then in my coaching practice, I've walked women through this too, because it's like, we really were fed this, like, for a lot of us, not all of us, not in every environment, but served this view of a God who has very negative view of women. And then we go out and we're like, but that's not what it says. That's not what I see Jesus doing. Like, what do I do here? Or for some of us, it was, we heard the words like Jesus values women, God loves women, whatever, but we watched the church do it differently. Women weren't allowed to preach. Women weren't allowed to teach. Women have to look a certain way or be a certain way. And then we're like, wait, those two don't line up. Is what you're saying true, or is what you're doing true? And so, and I have some women, especially in the therapy side of things, who are like afraid to get help for things because when they became a Christian or grew up a Christian, Jesus was supposed to make it all better. So they feel ashamed asking for help. And I told one of my clients who expressed to me like, oh, I thought I wouldn't have to deal with all of this, like this stuff. I thought it would be okay when I met Jesus, because they said that when, we were Christians, then everything changes and it becomes good and everything's great. And I said, listen, God put me here to disrupt that narrative, that exact narrative, because like, that is not how it works. And that's not what the Bible says, but you are valuable and God wants you to be able to get the support you need. That's the God you serve, And so it's beautiful to see women who want to stay in a faith community because they love Jesus, but we're all feeling like you said, I loved how you worded it, of being church orphans. Like, we're just trying to figure out, where do we fit now? What place is for us now? So.
Well, and I love that you're offering a place that women can go to find that, and in a way that I can't begin to tell you how many church therapists I've been hurt by. There was a very long time that I insisted on only going to church therapists, who I learned later were not certified in any way. They just were like, oh, these are the church therapists. And I was hurt very, very badly by those people. And I'm glad to see people who are practicing in a secular way, but they are bringing a faith-based approach to it. So like people who have secular credentials, but who are able to provide a faith-based approach if that is what you would like them to provide.
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably a better way to go about doing that. We like people, we'd like people to have the training and the certifications and credentials and licensure just to make things are above board. I'm just saying these are good. These are objectively good things.
Exactly.
This is for anyone who's had a great experience going to a church pastor or anything like that. No hate. I love you. Anyone is welcome to do what feels best for them. All I'm saying, I did not have a good experience going that route. So I'm glad that women are getting to go have that experience with you.
Yeah. Listen, that's a whole other rant that I won't get into today that my husband and I talk about ad nauseum of like pastors and pastoral counselors having actual training, but not my circus, not my monkeys. So,
yes. Well, that seems like a good place to end this, because what I want to do is make sure that people know how to find you. Do you offer like remote and digital care and services? Like, are people able to book remotely with you, or do you only do in person?
So in my private practice in the state of Washington, I do virtual and in person.
Okay.
In Everett, Washington, most of my clients are virtual, though. They're all spread out over the state. So I'm only licensed in Washington for therapy. For my coaching, which isn't clinical, I literally focus on burnout, balance, and like helping moms gain confidence in motherhood, work with clients all over the country. And my program is a virtual program. So,
okay. So how do people find? I'm so sorry.
So I am under soul_cadence_coaching on Instagram and Threads and TikTok. I think that's my TikTok handle too. And then Candice at Candice Soul Cadence Coaching on YouTube. And then all of those link to my website. So, but those are the easiest places to find me, is those places. So,
okay. And is your website the best way to book with you?
Yes. So my website is soulcadencecoaching.services, and that'll have the best way to book with me. And people can reach out to me on there.
Okay. So I encourage everyone to go follow Candice on all of her social media. You can go check out her website if you want to book with her. I will also have all of these things linked down in the show notes. And as always, if you're a person who prefers to see the actual transcript, if you want to like just read through for a recap, I will have the full transcript of this show in the show notes on my website, amberwardell.com. And again, all of the links to Candice's socials and her website will be down there below. So once again, Candice, thank you so much for being on. This was wonderful. I encourage everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. This was healed something for me, I think.
Good.
This was really good.
I love conversations like this. So it's so refreshing.
Well, good. I'm really glad that you came on today. All right. So to everyone else, love ya, mean it, always, mwah. And I'll see you in the next one.